So starting off tonight, we're going to have to pick on Alabama. A couple of stories here. The Supreme Court sided with the state of Alabama last night. Case about racial gerrymandering. We're reading from 538. February 7th, the U.S. Supreme Court reinstated the congressional map passed by Alabama's Republican-controlled legislature for the 2022 elections, pending a final decision on the merits of the case at a later date. The court's ultimate ruling could still have broad implications for the Voting Rights Act protection against racial gerrymandering. On January 24th, Alabama became the second state after Ohio to have its new congressional map struck down in court, while Ohio's map was thrown out by the state Supreme Court for violating the state constitution. Alabama's was overturned by 3 federal judges who determined the map shortchanged black voters of representation in Congress. A significant difference because it will require the Supreme Court to weigh in, potentially reshaping federal law in the process. As a result, the ruling could reverberate far beyond Alabama. We covered this the other day. That congressional district ran from Montgomery through what they call the Black Belt of Alabama and encompassed a section of Birmingham. Birmingham and Montgomery are like 2-3 hours away from each other. It was an insane looking district. That is called packing in terms of gerrymandering, packing all of the black voters into one congressional district. U.S. Supreme Court ruled in 2019 that partisan gerrymandering was a political question that federal courts should not adjudicate. However, they can still hear cases related to racial gerrymandering, whether a map discriminates against voters of a certain race. I thought the 538 article was going to go into it more. I want to read Hagan's dissent on this. Let's see if Newsweek can give us the insight that we want. Fuck you, 538. Dissent, Kagan says Alabama voting map does disservice to black people. Supreme Court Justice Elena Kagan issued a blistering dissent after the court ruled to uphold a GOP-drawn congressional map in Alabama, saying it would do a disservice to black voters. In a 5-4 decision, the court stated that the map, which was previously drawn by Alabama Republicans, could remain in place for the foreseeable future until the full case is heard by the High Court. Halts a previous decision from a lower federal court that stated that the redrawn map could not be used because it likely violated the Voting Rights Act. The violation came, the lower court said, because the Republican map gives black voters political control in only a single district. It means that they would be able to select just 14% of the state's congressional delegation, despite Alabama having the 5th highest percentage of black residents in the country. Although the lower court had ordered the creation of a new map, the Supreme Court's decision now means that the GOP-led map will be used for the state's primaries. The court will hear oral arguments on the case. The map will likely also be used for the November general election, making it significantly harder for the Democratic Party to capture an additional seat in the House of Representatives. This is significant because it was looking better for the Democrats for the fall, based on a number of factors. A lot of people are predicting that they are going to get slaughtered in the House. But this court ruling was heralded as a way that Democrats might actually do better. Her dissenting opinion, Kagan blasted her conservative colleagues for voting in the GOP's map's favor, stating that it would hurt enfranchised efforts in Alabama, a state the most recent census estimates is 27% black. Alabama is not entitled to keep violating black Alabamians' voting rights Just because the court's order came down in the first month of an election year, Kagan wrote in her dissent, the court is wrong to stay that decision based on a hastily made and wholly unexplained prejudgment. It is ready to change the law. The decision does a disservice to our own appellate processes, which serve both to constrain and to legitimate the court's authority. To legitimate, Kagan continued, it does a disservice to the district court, which meticulously applied the court's long-standing voting rights precedent. And most of all, it does a disservice to black Alabamians, who under the precedent have had their electoral power diminished in violation of a law this court once knew to buttress all of American democracy. Chris England, chair of the Alabama Democratic Party, said in a statement following the decision that the canary in the coal mine just died. Now, it's not like Alabama is a racist state. It's not like they would do racist shit all over this state. It's not like they would honor the first black student right next to the former KKK leader. Oh, wait a minute. They did exactly that. The University of Alabama honors first black student to former KKK leader. Many are outraged. Hillary Green received tenure at the University of Alabama. She knew exactly how she wanted to celebrate. Associate professor of history visited the campus's historical marker dedicated to the university's first black student, authorine Lucy Foster. There, Green posed for her first professional photos as a tenured professor. I know whose shoulders I was standing on, Green said. Without her, I wouldn't be where I stand today. The university's Board of Trustees announced on Thursday that a campus building called Graves Hall would be renamed to honor Lucy Foster. But beside her name, the name Graves will also remain, honoring former Alabama Governor Bibb Graves, who was once a Ku Klux Klan officer. As Green learned about the board's decision, one painful thought lingered. A black woman alone was not enough to have her own building. The move to rename the building Lucy Graves Hall has sparked outrage among many professors, students, and alumni who argue placing Lucy Foster's name beside a former KKK member taints her legacy. They're clearly trying to appease our students of color and students who believe in diversity while still holding on to that violent, racist legacy they're unwilling to relinquish, according to Sydney Shepard, a 2021 UA graduate, who was part of a years-long student-led movement to rename the building after Lucy Foster. They preach social justice and equity, yet they still hold on to Graves' name so tightly. Several Alabama universities have Graves' name on buildings and structures, but two recently removed it from their campuses. In 2020, Alabama State University took his name off a residence hall, and Troy University replaced his name with civil rights icon John Lewis on a business college building. Foster attended classes at UA's Graves Hall for just 3 days in 1956 before she was expelled after protests and threats against her life. At one point, a mob surrounded Graves Hall in protest of her enrollment. She spent much of her time at the university hiding in between classes, according to Trustee Emeritus Judge John England Jr. at a meeting announcing the name change. The university didn't enroll another black student until 1963. Fuck Alabama. In 1989, Lucy Foster returned to the university as a master's degree candidate in the College of Education, housed in Graves Hall. She graduated in 1992 and has since been recognized by an endowed scholarship and clock tower in her name.